Hello everyone, I'm Seema Sachdeva. I'm Deputy News Editor at the Tribune, Chandigarh. Today we have with us food historian, academician, author Padma Shri Dr. Pushpesh Pant, who has been a columnist with the Tribune for 2 decades. Dr. Pant has written more than 50 books on cuisines, culture, religion, and foreign policy. His latest book, From King's Table to Street Food, brings to us the food history of Delhi. This has been published by Speaking Tiger. And so Dr. Pant will take us today on the food journey and food history of Delhi. Welcome, Dr. Pant.
Thank you.
Okay, so Dr. Pant, there's so many books on Delhi and so many on food. So what is it that makes this book so unique? Kindly share.
I think there are very many books on Delhi. They deal with architecture, history, whatever. And there are books on Delhi food which talk tangentially of history. But I don't think that there is a book in market at the moment or on the reader's shelves, an out of print book, which combines personal memoir, history, and food together. So this is not so much a history book as a personal memoir of a person, migrant, refugee, growing up in Delhi and becoming a Delhiwala. So Delhi is we often think that Delhi is a city of refugees and we think Punjabi refugees. We forget that there are Bengali refugees, the Tamilian refugees, the Kerala Malayali refugees, the Northeastern refugees from different seven sisters and one brother,
Right.
Uttarakhandi refugees, Nepalese refugees. So the place is full of Orias, etc. So the query starts who's a Delhiwala and whose Delhi it is. So from time immemorial, since the Mahabharata epic times, the Khanda forest was burnt and the Pandavas occupied this land and founded the city of Indraprastha. Several cities of Delhi have come up. Bar bar ujdi, bar bar basi. And as the phrase has it, ujad gayi to phir bhi Delhi. So it retained its personality. But the personality kept changing. It was a Rajput personality. It was later on a Turko-Afghan personality as an imperial capital. But the people remained the same. The ruling elite may have been a Turko-Afghan sultan or a Mughal Basha, but the Muslim aristocracy was a minority. The majority of the masses were Hindus of different castes, Banyas from Rajasthan, Khatris from Punjab, Kashmiri Pandits, castes from all over. And of course, Jats in Haryana were next door, Brajbhumi.
So there's a lot of research I can see in this book. I mean, like this is actually a storehouse of information. It's almost like you've opened an encyclopedia. So like, what kind of research went into it, and like how much time did it take you to write this book?
To be honest, it took me almost ever since I came to Delhi, I started thinking about Delhi. क्या खा रहे हैं, कहाँ जा रहे हैं, क्या देख रहे हैं, क्या पढ़ रहे हैं, what are the haunts, what are the recommended places, what are the signature delicacies. This was way back in 65. So one could say that the research has been going on first-hand field work since 64, 65.
Right.
But writing was really much shorter. It took me almost an year to write. And with younger kids like my son, who's no longer young, he's 54, my young students who were then 21, 22, 23. So they said, आपने ये नहीं खाया है, आपने ये नहीं इसका mention नहीं किया. So I went on a guided conducted food walk with them in Cyber Hub, in smaller hole in the wall eateries or the five-star food marts. So I think, but the actual writing was taking place simultaneously. So I was updating my notes, I was updating my drafts. So writing actually didn't take too much time.
Okay.
6 months, man.
Right, right. And if you were to like kind of define one historic event or incident in Indian history that changed the foodscape of Delhi, what would that be?
Two. I would say, if you permit me two, I would say two. One was emergency in 1975 when Mrs. Gandhi and her spoiled son, Sanjay Gandhi, behaved in an extra-constitutional manner. And what happened was something like access to cheap food was denied. The PRRM coffee house, which operated in Connaught Place in the theatre communication building, was shut down because Sanjay Gandhi thought it was subversive, anti-Mrs. Gandhi. And then Glitzy Rambles restaurant replaced it. And it never could get back to its old days. The second point of time, I think, is the convention of the Asian Games in the 1980s, early 1980s. Lots of five-star hotels came, lots of areas where food zones were earlier prohibited were changed, land use was changed. So this was interesting. And people were introduced to a lot of interesting food. Now, the two things also have two other coordinates. In 1975, when the emergency came, the Green Revolution had already more or less been 10 years in progress. So people were not living in want and abject poverty and deprivation. But by the time the 1980s games started, the Indian Republic had almost done another 2 decades almost after the emergency. So people were more self-confident. The youngsters were there. They were not. A lot more foreign travel had taken place. The khel grounds were built up, and people were experimenting with foods which their parents had not. A, they could afford it. B, the food was accessible. This was the time when McD was trying to come into India, KFC was trying to come into India, Coca-Cola was trying to get back into India. They had been thrown out by George Fernandez in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this footsteps of future globalization were heard. And after Mrs. Gandhi's assassination in 1984, when Rajiv Gandhi became the prime minister, he talked of India in the 21st century, India's power, and the different missions from telecom mission to other. So things which are out of reach of people were accessible now. So I would say that mid 1970s and the mid 1980s mark 2 points in time when Delhi's skyline changed, Delhi's food culture changed, and even the refugees who had come from Pakistan or East Bengal had struck new roots. So they were more self-confident communities. So you have Chittaranjan Park in the Bengali Khana. You have Karol Bagh as one who should not say a Madrasi ghetto, but the area which Madrasis preferred. So there were these changes. And then the private builders were developing new colonies in between. So DDA had not been able to do everything, but Greater Kailash came up, South Extension came up, Hoskas came up, DLF developed a lot of properties, Ansals developed a lot of properties, and these were outside the government colonies. So government colonies were very hierarchical. The elite lived in Moti Bagh, Meena Bagh, the Janpat, Firozshah Road, etc., the MPs, the ministers. But the clerks and officers stayed in Vinayanagar, Sevanagar, Pandara Road, things of that kind. Sevanagar, of course, was for the menial subordinates. Vinayanagar, Sevanagar, Nauroji Nagar was for clerical staff. And of course, Pandara Road, Kakanagar were for the officers. Ravindranagar for slightly higher grade officers. Chanakyapuri came up and developed in these years, and then there were diplomatic enclave, which was the poshest of the posh next to golf links. So you had these areas where the aristocrats from the old Delhi moved in, the Mathurs and the Kayas from civil lines, the really well-heeled Muslim families like the Shama family to the Malchamar, with the building now has been bought over by Bhenji Mayawati and her party. But you had the DCM family moving into Kitchener Road, Patel Marg. You had the Times of India family moving there. So you had the psychogeography of Delhi changing. What was earlier South Delhi was jungle, but then South Delhi became
Right.
Kailash GP1, GK2, Kailash Hills. So this is what I think changed the food in Delhi.
So, and global tastes also did make a difference on this. Like, I mean,
Yes, of course, because the five-star hotels wanted to promote a food which was very expensive. Like you would have Casa Medici in Taj Hotel, serving before its time the Italian food, not pizzas and that kind of thing, but really full course antipasti and desserts and main courses. We also had Orient Express, arguably the most expensive restaurant, which was having food on the historic Orient Express. This was again a Taj thing. So they competed with each other. The ITC hotels wanted to promote Indian food like Dampukht and Bukhara, very expensive restaurants, but they also had a rooftop restaurant called 360 Degrees where Pan-Asian cuisine was served. So I would say this global flavors were introduced. They were not open to everybody like today. Like today, you go to Cyber Hub and any boy working or a girl working in a call center under good pressure could enjoy this. You can have sushi, you can have Korean, you can have Mediterranean, you can have doner kebab, you can have Lebanese, you can have falafel. So this was not there then. This is what has happened at the turn of the century. by the time the 21st century came, until the interruption of COVID, when people were locked out in their houses, I think the lot of global flavors came to India. Maruti factory brought a Japanese restaurant for Japanese workers, engineers in Maruti. The Hyundai and Samsung
Right.
brought, LG brought the Korean food. So they were, would have a Korean restaurant in Ansal Plaza in Khelgaon. So I was very curious, why should it be there? But because those people were homesick for their home
Right.
food, so
Right,
you
right.
had this.
Okay, so now what is quintessential Delhi food? Is it like, what according to you, I mean, like, is it the fusion food that has come to us, or the refugee Punjabi, the Delhi chaat, this chaat and all, or Mughlai, or what would you
I,
call it?
I think you have asked a very interesting question. I think when we think in terms of fusion, we think in terms of Indian food fusing with Western food. We don't think Indian food fusing south and north, east and west. So
Okay,
there is a tandoori tikka, a paneer tikka. So you have a paneer 65, which is the
right.
chicken 65
Right.
masala.
Dish, yeah,
You
right.
would have something like a dosa, which would be a keema dosa, an asparagus dosa, a palak paneer dosa. No dosa down south, self-respecting Tamil Brahman would be eating a paneer dosa or a keema dosa or a dosa.
Mm.
The
Okay.
interesting part is this, that you have in Delhi at the moment a tandoori momo. Now,
Mhm.
momo is essentially a steamed dish coming from Nepal or the
Right.
northeastern border of India and or
Mhm.
Ladakh maybe.
Right.
But suddenly you have not even a deep fried momo. You have a tandoori momo served with hollandaise sauce, at
Mhm.
times with chow mein and with sweet chili sauce, etc. So I think this is a fusion of a pan-Indian variety. But
Right.
when you say what quintessential Delhi, chaat is very much still is fashion. Film
Mhm.
stars from they come outsiders who can, I mean, you say very hygienic chaat, pani
Mhm.
puchka made with Bisleri water or Kinley
Mhm.
water. Or you say, oh, at times more adventurous, the vodka filled
Mhm.
440 volt thing, which a Punjabi by nature did at one stage. But people would eat chaat as
Mhm.
a reverse snobbery. That a film star who
Mhm.
can afford everything would say, I'm going to Bengali market, Sundarnagar, and eating, oh, Gande Nale ke paas chaat kha ke aa gaye the.
Mhm.
So chaat will stay. But the funny thing with chaat is that chaat is also being transformed. It is being filled up with untouched by hand, paper gloves, skull caps, and filled
Mhm.
up with kosher water and so on. But then you have meat ka dahi bada. You have think of that kind of thing, na, which Bonu
Right.
does in
Mhm.
Parsi restaurant. The, the book, one chapter in the book is titled "The Past is Future" or "The Future is Past."
Yeah,
Why?
right.
Because Delhiwala will not give up its palate DNA eh,
Mhm.
born with. So you would have kali dal, madi dal,
Mhm.
you would have
Mhm.
butter chicken or kadai butter paneer, and you will have naan and kulcha, and you will have your tagdi kebab and tikka. Now,
Mhm.
they will change form. They will be given in a more dainty form. They will become more boneless. There would be court cases between who invented butter chicken.
Mhm. Right, right. Of course, that.
But nobody is asking for a tandoori murga anymore. They will order a butter chicken or a
Mhm.
not even know that the Amritsari machi is a pakoda, but they would have
Mhm.
machi ka tikka. And they would say, हमको तो मच्छी का टिक्का सामन में चाहिए. हमको बर्रा kebab खाना है, but I would have a barra kebab made of New Zealand lamb. I fail to see why anybody should eat a
Mhm.
salmon tikka is a fish which tastes best smoked with rye bread and a little. That's the way it should be eaten. But who
Mhm.
am I to decide how it should be eaten? If a good old Sardarji wants it done the style of Amritsari
Mhm.
machi,
Right.
each is welcome to his own. So I think this is going to be a bit confusing for the time. People
Mhm.
will return to their native taste. You'll have a pizza topping with paneer tikkas because
Right.
you would have a
We already
vegetarian.
have that. Yeah, we can already see those
We
kind.
even have a Navratri pizza, which is made
Right,
with
right.
kotu and sour curd and kosher paneer tikka and sabudana balls on top of it,
Mhm.
almost like a Falahari thing. But the
Okay.
interesting part is this, that KFC found out to its regret that they have to serve it with a shorba and a gravy and a pilaf rice imitation in a rice bowl. So they have
Yeah.
had to make compromises in India, the big companies.
Mhm. Right.
McD can't serve a beef burger, perish the
Mhm.
thought. So they have fish fillet, they have chicken, they have egg, they have a potato tikki one. So once you start putting a tikki in a burger, people would say,
Mhm.
अच्छा हम तो tikki वैसे ही खा रहे थे. हमारे तो समोसे ऐसे नहीं
Uh,
थे.
Absolutely.
There
Yeah,
is
right.
there is this return to the roots and
Mm-hmm.
back to the past. So we
Okay.
are witnessing this very much so.
Okay.
So you have finger foods in various pubs and resto bars and big chill and things of that kind. But essentially, it remains an Indian dish.
Mm-hmm. So otherwise, like who do you think can claim to be an original Delhiwala then? Because it's
Uh,
like food coming from so many places and so
I-
many flavors are coming.
I'm a biased party. I'm a biased party. I would say that anybody who identifies with Delhi and
Mm-hmm.
has spent a long number of years of his or her life in Delhi and has struck roots here can claim to be a Delhiwala. It could be a Punjabi refugee, but
Mm-hmm.
most Punjabi refugees are third generation progeny of the original refugees here.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are those who have stayed here, the
Mm-hmm.
Muslim Punjabis who came when Shah Jahan set up the city, like the Punjabi Saudagarans, Sardar Dyal family, for instance, or the Jamia Hamdard kind of people. So there are people who can claim lineage in Delhi 200 years old, 300 years old, some 400 years old. I mean, नेहरू जी की ससुराल भी तो दिल्ली में थी ना,
जी
हक्सर
जी
की हवेली में,
जी.
सीताराम बाजार के बगल में. So you would
Mm-hmm.
have the Mathur family staying back, descendants of Mir Munshis, uh, Madhu Jaffrey's family, and these people, the P.N. Dhar's family. So but they are not the only ones who are the Diliwalas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you say when Delhi was shifted as an imperial capital from Calcutta to Delhi, lots of Madrasis, Bengalis, and other people came. When the railroad was being laid down after mutiny, lots of labor from eastern UP came. And Rajasthan is next door, Haryana is next door. So they don't treat themselves as Dilliwala, but they are
Mm-hmm.
Delhi now.
So many flavors are coming from all over India. So, but what exactly would you say would be Delhi's signature dishes? Like, what
Ji,
is its own identity in that sense?
I think the rule is very simple. You have a banya dish like a bedmi, puri, and methi ki chutney,
Mm-hmm.
and aloo ki tarkari. It would have
Mm-hmm.
variations, but it would be very much a Delhi dish. You
Right.
would have a Delhi ki chaat which would retain its difference from a Banaras ki chaat. वहाँ आजकल दिल्ली में भी some fashionable people serve palak patta chaat. They serve
Mm-hmm.
tomato ki chaat. But these are not Delhi chaats. Delhi chaat is pani puchka, dahi papdi chaat, dahi bhalle, samosa chole.
Mm-hmm.
They will
Okay.
remain. They will remain. Uh, there is, if you say the non-veg, you will have some variation of barra kebab. You will have some variation of nihari. Now, nihari is very interesting. You go to a five-star hotel, you are
Mm-hmm.
given on menu Bad Shahi nihari. What a tautology! Because
Mm-hmm.
nihari is a Lashkari khana. It was
Acha.
cooked on the streets for Rohilla soldiers of fortune, made
Mm-hmm.
of buff, cooked overnight, very gelatinous, served with a little magas, served with a little marrow. But nihari has become now nalli nihari, made with the good cuts of bone from kid goat and with aromatic spices. So
Mm-hmm.
nihari will stay, the barak kebab will stay, but whether they will rule the roost is difficult, because if the demography of the city has changed, you would have momo to stay here. You
Mm-hmm.
would have litti choka also adding. You had parathas of Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
Delhi doesn't actually have a biryani of its own, but there's great non-veg dishes like aloo gosht ka salan. It has great dishes like shabdeg. It has very interesting breads which are different from the
Mm-hmm.
Lucknow breads of the same name. So uh, you would have get a rogni, you would get a bakar khani, you would get a sheermal, you would get a varki
Mm-hmm.
paratha, but they would not be the same as Kashmiri breads or Lucknow breads of the same name. So this will remain. These are all Delhi specialities.
But these are like the ones that were originally there, or these have improvised and
They were
changed.
when we say originally there, they've been originally there since the foundation of Shah Jahanabad. Maybe some
Mm-hmm.
older than Turko-Afghan Sultanate, and the Matka Pir ki biryani is
Mm-hmm.
pre-Mughal, is
Okay.
next to the Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia's Dargah. So
Okay.
that is there very much. So some of this is देख मिठाई की आपने बात की ना तो there is a मिठाई shop called Ghantewala which is reopened after a gap during a lockout during lockdown during the COVID. This was a shop which was established in Delhi by a Rajasthani Halwai,
Mm-hmm.
which dates before the French Revolution, dates before the American Revolution. It was a 225-year-old shop which was selling
Mm-hmm.
Sohan Halwa Jozi Delhi ka, which is
Okay.
Delhi landmark thing. इतनी
Mm-hmm.
बड़ी टिक्की लाई सोन दिल्ली जा रहे तो सोहन हलवा
जी
खाओ
जी
ना.
जी जी
Before
जी
the was fashionable, it was tagged like that. So I think these are the dishes of Delhi which will continue.
What are the emerging food trends?
I think the right word, Seemaji, would say they're serving local cuisine. There
Mhm.
was a veneer of global, but the substance is local. So
Okay.
you are having a naan filled up with French blue cheese, or
Mhm.
you are having a kulcha which has bacon rashers in it, or you are
Mhm.
having a pulao which is flavored not only with raisins but with blackberries. तो फारसा
Right.
पुलाव तो था, मगर अब आप
Mhm.
क्या कर रहे हैं, आपने ब्लैकबेरी भी दे दिया. आप
जी
एक छेना पूड़ा उड़िया चीज केक है, उसको आप चीज केक बना दे रहे हैं.
जी
So
जी जी.
you have kulfis in different exotic flavors for
Mhm.
तो
Right.
अब फलाफल जो है वो बेसिकली एक पकौड़ा ही है ना, चने के आटे का पकौड़ा ही है एक तरह का.
जी जी जी
So
जी
when we
बिल्कुल.
go back to the vegan route, we go back to the organic route,
Mhm.
we go back to the millets route, we are
Right.
going back to a heritage which was
Mhm.
our own, but we now look at it through the lens of the international gourmet.
Right, right.
Now, what happens is that in a शादी का banquet, you get a
Mhm.
bread basket, जिसमें
Mhm.
बेसनी मिस्सी रोटी भी है, भरवा करेला भी है, भरवा भिंडी भी है, भरवा टींडा भी है, भरवा कमल ककड़ी भी है. So, you have a mishmash which represents various communities which have made Delhi its home. So, in a same level, if you start excavating, you find several layers of a rock, and you can simultaneously scoop out, like the फलूदे का गिलास जो होता है ना, पारसी फलूदा,
जी
कि
जी.
उसमें एक लेवल पे आइसक्रीम है, एक लेवल पे कुल्फी है, एक लेवल पे टूटी फ्रूटी है, एक लेवल पे रूह अफ़ज़ा शरबत है. आप निकाल के जो चाहते हैं खाते हैं. दैट इज व्हाट
बिल्कुल.
द दिल्ली फूड टुडे इज. इट्स अ बिट
Okay.
ऑफ Mediterranean, a bit of Chinese which is called Chindian, a bit of Indian.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Pant, for this delectable journey. I'm sure our viewers
Thank you.
must have enjoyed this fascinating food trip. And thank you so much for your time and all the best for your book. Bye.
Thank you.